and we've highlighted the setbacks that have been provided. These are recent photos that were taken of the subject property. This is the front facade that's facing west. The orientation of the directions are a little odd in that area of Glen Walter as County Road 2 meanders. So it's debatable whether it's south, west, east, north, depending on who you're talking to. So that's why it's kind of labeled here as southwest. For those of you maybe familiar with this home, it's got quite a bit of attention recently as it's being constructed as a passive dwelling. And the property owner is in the midst of severing it. One of the requirements for the severance process was to obtain a copy of the up-to-date survey that's also required prior to a final building permit as well. And during the receipt of the survey, that's when we realized it didn't meet the rear yard setback. This would be a location of the setback at the back here. And here's a view kind of the back of the dwelling here. The property is designated urban settlement area in the county official plan, and it does conform to the general intent of the official plan. And the property is zoned residential too and conforms to the general intent of the zoning bylaw. This is a map of what our current zoning is. Again, the property is highlighted here, and it represents that it's located in the R2 zone. The application was circulated to all abutting property owners within 60 meters and applicable municipal staff. I've not received any written or verbal comments to date. And planning and building departments support the application, and we do recommend this application to be approved as the request is very minor in nature. I noticed the applicant was not able to join us this evening. I'll do my best to answer any questions, but I believe the presentation is quite straightforward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Haley. Any questions of council? Qualifications? Anybody in the, Deputy Mayor Lang, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I was, go ahead and if nobody had any questions, I'll make a motion.
Are there any questions of anybody sitting in the hall, community? None? All right, then.
Since no questions and it's only about this much distance, I think we go ahead and pass this. I'll make a motion to do so.
Seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Perfect. So then we'll just move on to the next item on the agenda. Oh, sorry, call a vote. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Moving on to 5, new business A2222 Meyer. I don't know if we've solved the Mayor, sorry, solved the technical issues.
Yeah, I think you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Excellent. So then we'll go to Ms. Haley first.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. We're moving on to an application A2222, and this application has been heard by the committee previously, and I'll get into those details in a few minutes. So this property is located at part of Lot 7, Concession 9, in the geographic township of Lancaster, now in South Glengarry, and it's located at 21967 Concession 9 Road. The subject property is approximately 1.36 acres in area. This is a key map of the property. As you can see, it's located really at the entry of what's known as Lancaster Heights, and so the purpose of the minor variance requested is the owner constructed a detached residential garage and a retaining wall in 2015, which didn't conform to the required setback of the zoning bylaw. So therefore, the following relief from Part 3.14 and Part 3.4510 of the zoning bylaw is being requested. To reduce the interior side yard setback for an accessory structure, which is the detached garage, from 1.2 meters to 0.79 meters, and to reduce the retaining wall setback from 1 meter to 0 meters to the east property line. We do now have some images to demonstrate this. This is an excerpt of the survey that was provided. You can see that the garage is located on an angle. I'm going to give a more zoomed in, go back here. So the garage is located on an angle. You'll see that the bottom right-hand corner of the retaining wall is over the property line, and you can see that the garage is located inside the property line. Here's an image of the garage. So at the top would be the northeast view of the subject property, And the bottom is the southeast side view of the subject property, and that would show the corner of the retaining wall that's encroaching. These photos were taken last fall because that's when we originally heard the application. Plus, it's very difficult to tell at this time of the year with snow on the ground. Here's another image of the existing retaining wall showing where that corner would be on the abutting property owner's property. So this property is designated rural district in the county official plan, and the application does conform to the general intent of the official plan. And the property is zoned as state residential, and it conforms to the general intent of the zoning bylaw. Again, this is a zoning map, and the light gray represents the estate residential zoning. So on October 17th, 2022, the Committee of Adjustment meeting was held, and this application was deferred as additional information was requested and required to support the requested variance to reduce the retaining wall setback from 1 meter to 0 meters. Since then, we have received additional information from a professional engineer. It's a report prepared by LaSalle Engineering and Associates Limited. This report confirms that the retaining wall may be deconstructed and reestablished up to the property line without having a negative impact on the foundation of the garage. So this means that if the application is approved this evening, the retaining wall can be removed, it can be reconstructed, and it would be at the property line, not over the property line, so not going onto the neighboring property owners. If the minor variance is approved, a building permit will be required to be applied for and issued to reconstruct the retaining wall. Therefore, it is recommended that this be a condition of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment that a building permit be applied for within 6 months of the approval. The applicant has been circulated to all abutting property owners within 60 meters and applicable municipal staff. To date, I've not received any written or verbal comments. We do have neighbors in the audience this evening attending, and we have the applicants online via Zoom. We have reviewed the engineer's report. Our chief building official reviewed the report, has no concerns that the deconstruction of the wall and the reconstruction, he has no concerns that that can't be achieved and that can't be done well, and it'll still meet the building code and not have any impact to the garage. So with that, we are recommending that it be approved. So thank you, Mr. Chair. So before you ask them to speak, we have to do the committee members, then the applicant, then the audience.
Okay.
Thank you.
So just for the audience members? Oh. Zero meters,
If we
but
can follow.
But if we're just going to follow the orders, we'll go to council, then the applicant, and then members. So, but that question will be answered. Okay. So are there any questions around council table? Councilor Jaworski?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just wanted to double check with Ms. Haley. Is the the engineering report is saying that it can go right to the property line, but they're very definite on that, right? That it can't go any further back onto the property in question? Like that property line is as far back it can go without causing structural issues, or was there some wiggle room there?
It is indicated that it can go back to the property line, that they can manage the deconstruction and reconstruction within that setback.
Deputy Mayor Lang?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I think I'm with Stephanie that I thought we had indicated that we would like to see a bit of room there, like 6 inches or something. And I don't know if that was attempted or if they just said, well, we can make it to the property line and leave it there. But I thought that was how we'd kind of left it when we deferred it.
Councilor McDonnell?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm looking at one of the pictures of the renderings in the package, and I'm just wondering if, Joanne, can we clarify that? To my knowledge, the way it looks right here is that the property line, is that below ground? I'm just looking where the retaining wall is, because it looks like it starts, but if that's below ground, I guess it's less intrusive, because it does go back on an angle away from the property line. So if that's underground, or is that, like, I'm just looking to see relocated insulation, like, is that, I'm assuming it's underground, but I'm not sure.
So through you, Mr. Chair, yeah. So if you look at the rendering that we provided to you, there's 3 sections to that rendering. The first one on the left-hand side speaks to the existing slab that's underneath the garage. I don't have this on the screen. This was provided to the committee.
I see it on page 14 of the agenda is where I'm looking at it.
The second section is showing where the property line is and how the retaining wall can be reconstructed. So if you follow that, you'll then see how there is going to be backfill, then the retaining wall itself, and it goes down on a slope inside the property line. So it is showing, a slight setback, but if you read the report too, it talks about consisting of a +4 inch horizontal dimension, even with underside of footing. So they are showing a bit of a tolerance in there. It's difficult with the application though for us to say, it could maybe be modified for us to say a 1 meter setback to a 0.01 meter setback or a 0.005 meter setback. There's limited space to work within the area because of how it was originally constructed. I think the committee has to be satisfied that it's going to go to 0, because if not, we're talking a couple of centimeters if we reduce that tolerance type thing. And based on this drawing, they are demonstrating that they can do it. Then to continue, in my third column, that shows how the original retaining wall was constructed. You'll see it's labeled there as existing, and it was to be removed. And it says here, reinstate retaining wall with toe at property line, provide 12-inch base consistent of granular and compacted to 98% over undisturbed soil.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess, just looking at it, I was under the same understanding as the deputy mayor. I understood that we were coming back, I think we asked, give us an inch at least or something. I'm not an engineer, so I won't say it's possible or not possible. At this point, I think it's a lot better than what's there. My other question, I was wondering, I just see on that rendering as well the perforated drain for around the foundation, and maybe this is a question for the property owners, so it could wait. But it was just, I do remember there was an issue of drainage that we thought was, I think we put a condition in. I don't know if not, that we'd ask that the property owners address the drainage issues that were kind of created from the building, just because the property levels, the buildings are a lot different in height, but that might be a question for the neighboring properties. So we can go to the owners of the existing property here.
All right, can you hear us? If you have any comments online, please do let us know now. Mrs. Mayor? I saw the hand up earlier at one point, so I would assume that.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Oh, okay,
Great.
good. With regards to the drainage, yes, the drainage is part of that plan, and that is part and parcel of what the reworking of the wall would address. Also, as Ms. Haley has pointed out, and as it is indicated by the engineers, from what I understand, their concern is that they want to protect the perimeter of the thickened slab foundation that is under the garage, and to make sure that there is no loss of underside footing. And so that because of that, they have to ensure that there is frost protection, and that's why they have done the slope on a 1-to-1 slope, is what they have indicated. Taking that slope away from the underside of the foundation. It is, I remember when we met with the building inspector as well, that was a concern of his, that we make sure that or that the engineer makes sure that that frost protection is there so that the garage is not compromised, the structure of the garage is not compromised.
Okay, thank you. Did council have any questions based on that information provided by the applicant? Okay, now we'll. You'd like to ask something? Okay, great, then we'll go to the community. Okay, yes, great, and if you are to speak, do come to the microphone and use the, but yes, translation's fine, so.
Sorry, it's just because my boyfriend doesn't speak English at all. So what she just said, he does not understand. So our friend will be able to translate to him what has just been said on the by our neighbor.
Great, okay, we can wait a moment while the translation occurs.
I'm trying to help him, but he wants to know, like, the wall will be, like, because we didn't see the pictures that you guys were seeing. So the wall would be how much in to the, compared to what it is now?
Here, yeah. On va t'amener les photos.
That's the property line. That's on, so it'd be on their side, but not very much. But it would be off yours.
Okay, and all the drainage would go?
So there's a drain here, but then they'll have to do it on their own property. I don't know where.
Le drain est au milieu.
Ouais.
D'abord, ça a l'air comme ça va tout sortir là, mais ça va sortir.
So they're allowed to go like an inch from the line?
It's
Not
more or
unless
less,
we allow it.
it's basically, ça a l'air comme ça va être comme une doigt. En bas, mais ça va monter sur une angle. Comme une angle. Ouais,
On
en
their
haut-
side.
En haut, ça va être disons, 12 pouces, mais en bas, ça va être juste à la ligne.
OK.
C'est ça.
À ma ligne.
Ouais, à
Ça
ton
veut dire
ligne.
c'est zéro clearance.
C'est
qu'ils veulent.
zéro clearance
Mais on est venu.
au bas.
Mais pourquoi les 6 pouces ne marchent pas?
I think so.
If I may, as much as we can, we should have this conversation through the microphone. Even if it takes a moment longer to translate, I want to make sure that it's public record that way.
Fait que tu veux pas faire ça?
When we came on October, the first meeting when we came, we discussed that we did not want the minor variance. Now, we just hearing the way I understand, we only have that much space that we're gaining. I mean, we asked for a little bit more.
Si ça
And
serait une
so
clôture.
that means we're coming here today and there's no much issues with the space that we're asking for, like Mr. Lang said at the first meeting, at least 6 inches. So we're here for what?
Si on met une clôture, s'ils mettent une clôture, ils sont bons.
Yes,
Tu vois, 6 pouces.
Je vais faire le meilleur pour répéter ce que Joanne a dit au début. Oui, il faut juste la fermer. Qu'est-ce qu'on a compris du document de l'ingénieur? C'est avec l'angle du protection contre le gel, qui doit être à 45 degrés, ça fait en sorte qu'il semble que le maximum qui peut ramener le mur sans commencer à mettre la slab, peut-être avoir des problèmes, la base du garage, ça c'est le maximum qui peut la reculer pour avoir la protection contre le gel. C'est ça. Peut-être qu'il y a une pouce ou deux en bas, mais nous deux, on avait demandé s'il y avait plus, il semble que c'est impossible à cause de la protection du gel. Oui, puis je vais le traduire pour le reste.
Est-ce que c'est correct si tu utilisais votre microphone?
Moi, j'avais demandé d'installer une clôture aussi, parce que beaucoup de problèmes avec ces voisins-là. On n'en veut plus. Pourquoi qu'ils ne coupent pas le garage à la place en arrière? Ça s'est déjà fait, ça. Faire une nouvelle footing.
So the neighbor's question is, when they came, they asked about having some space so that they would be able to put up a fence to limit issues with the neighbor. And so their question, I guess, is to the applicant, asking if, why can't they cut part of the building off to move the retaining wall further back?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's a couple comments that I'd like to make. The application originally received was to reduce the retaining wall setback from 1 meter to 0 meters. We don't allow the public to request or dictate what the setback will be. It's based on what is applied for and what is presented. At the October meeting, it was deferred and it was requested that it be researched to determine, first of all, if we could have proof that the retaining wall could actually be reconstructed within the property line. Initially, there was meetings held in our office with our building official where he felt very satisfied that that could be done. However, the Committee of Adjustment did not have that information before them to prove that. Going back to the applicant and going back to the engineer, we asked them to provide a drawing that would meet the Ontario Building Code that could prove that the work could be deconstructed and reconstructed within the property line. That's what's been provided to us today. You'll see the way it's been on an angle. Underneath the ground, which is not visible, it'll be at the property line. Above the ground, it'll be, a small amount set back from the property line. If the committee's not happy with that this evening, the committee has the right to defer it again. You can ask for further clarification on from the engineer's report. You can ask them if there's an alternative design that they can come up with that maybe could result in a few inches of setback if you're unhappy of approving this to 0. In terms of drainage, drainage is something that's not discussed or can be controlled by the Committee of Adjustment. The Committee of Adjustment speaks to setbacks only. Drainage is going to be looked at the stage of the building permit. So our building official is now aware. We've learned about that in our previous meeting. With this modification, we're talking a corner of the building only. We're not talking the entire structure being over. And keep in mind, the building is 0.79 meters away from the property line. It's just the retaining wall. So that drainage issue, they felt, could be mitigated because we're talking about a corner of the wall only. So if the committee's unhappy this evening, or I shouldn't say unhappy, that's not the word I want to use, sorry. If the committee feels they don't have information before them that they can make a decision, or if they feel they want additional information clarified by the engineer on the design, then we can defer it one more time, or you can make a decision based on the request that's before you. So hopefully I've clarified that process a little bit, and if there's any questions, certainly let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Deputy Mayor Lang, and then Councillor McInell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We may have enough information to make the decision, and the decision may be no. So, I mean, I'm hopeful that the applicant who is looking for this minor variance is taking that into account. That, I mean, to me, they're the ones who erred in the first place. They built on the neighbor's property. And I think they should do everything they can to bend over backwards to fix that. And if it makes the neighbor happy that they're 6 inches away, I would hope that they were trying to be 6 inches away and not say, we're going to go right to the line and we want you to pass it. Because I put more weight on the neighbor who has done nothing wrong than the one that built the house or the garage in the wrong place. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm along the same lines. I'm looking at it too from the aspect that it's probably gonna be hard to go much further. But I'd agree with you. I'd like to know that they asked, but I don't know that we can really get that. But I'm just looking from this point of view on it. I get, the drainage will be addressed through the building permit. I'm just looking at the picture and I'm looking and second guessing again. I don't think we can confirm that I don't think that first block is underground, eh? I'm just looking now. It doesn't look like it. It'll be above ground. Yeah, okay. Okay, it's not. Okay. I don't know. It's difficult to say because we're gonna have probably, roughly 12 inches at the top. You're gonna have, obviously, it looks like there's some kind of space, but I don't know. It's struggling, I'm struggling to see if it could go back any further. But I don't know, what's the rest of committee's thought?
I saw Patricia's hand up. You have a comment, please go ahead.
The expertise of the surveyors, the expertise of the township, planning enforcement, building inspection, and the expertise of the engineer. This is also not our domain. We are not experts in this. So that's why we have gone to the experts to find out what is needed, what needs to be done, and how can it be done.
Councillor Jaworski.
So my question, maybe it's to Ms. Haley, but it might also be to the neighbors. With respect to a fence that can be put up, a fence in this area, what would be the rules about a fence that could be put up in that, like in terms of distance from property line, shared fencing? If you could elaborate on that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when you construct a fence, you have a couple of options. If you're in an urban setting on a very small lot, it's common to have fences to be located on property lines, and it's common for fences to be shared by owners. If you're on a larger lot where you have space, we always recommend that your fence be located inside your property line, so it's entirely on your property, and you can maintain that fence, meaning you can walk the perimeter of the fence on the exterior, you can stain it, you can prepare it, all of those things without trespassing. However, it is the people's choice because that's acceptable within the bylaw to build on the line. Just because we recommend going inside the line by, a half a foot or a foot for maintenance, that is up to the property owner. In this particular case, if they wanted to build their fence, they would struggle to put it directly on the property line in that point because of where the retaining wall is located. They would have to put it a few inches on top of the property line. One thing I do want to point out is these properties are 1.3 acres in size or greater. You don't need a fence directly on a property line when you're located in a rural area. You can, set back a few inches if you needed to. There's nothing that's going to be stopping you from putting a fence up. So if that answers your question, yeah.
Alors, ma question pour vous, c'est vous avez l'intention de construire une clôture? Merci, une clôture. Non, vous voulez... Non. OK. Oh, vous voulez que eux...
J'ai demandé... Moi, j'ai demandé, la dernière fois, j'avais parlé avec M. Sam, qui installe une clôture. Je suis tanné de les voir sur mon terrain. J'ai été obligé d'appeler la police parce que j'ai eu du vol sur mon terrain. Les petites madames, ils viennent chercher du bois chez nous. Ça n'a pas d'allure. S'ils peuvent mettre une clôture au complet jusqu'en arrière,
Sur leur bord.
on va la faire. Là, j'ai été obligé d'installer une clôture à vache au complet, là,
Sur
pour
notre
pas avoir personne sur mon terrain. On est tanné, là. Fait que le mur, ça marchera pas leur affaire.
Vous n'avez pas l'intention de construire une clôture, vous voulez que le voisin...
C'est le voisin
okay.
qui met une clôture, on est plus
Okay.
capable.
Okay. Translate, I was asking if they had an intention of putting up a fence. They don't have an intention of putting up a fence, although they've put up a cow fence for now to prevent trespassing. But they were hoping that the neighbors were going to be putting up a fence. Is that something that is part of Committee of Adjustment, a decision like this? I'm curious.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the bylaw doesn't require fencing in an area like this or a zoning like this. Where we require fencing is in between a residential and a non-residential use. So you would be dictating something that's not already required in the zoning bylaw. So I feel that that's not a reasonable request when nobody else would be subject to the requirement of constructing a fence in a rural or in a state residential zone.
Would you like something to say? I see your mic's on.
Yes. I'm a little bit frustrated because you've got law already written at the municipality. We came here without, well, building a house and everything like that. And now because the municipality did a mistake on that, I have to I'm penalized because of their garage, and we're asking to be fair because the law, if I'm thinking what I've been told and with the law that you've got, there's a certain space that should be between the neighbor, and I don't have that. And we're here to fight that. They don't want to move the garage at all. They did expertise with the engineer and everything. But I'm lazy in that because the law was not respected by your side. So
Ms. Haley has a comment.
because in the past, when we arrived, we already spoke with the neighbor, and he already told us that he knew that the garage was on our side.
C'est ma parole contre sa parole.
So now I know that there's no proof of that because it was between us two, but I mean, I'm lazy in that, we are lazy, and I know that it's possible to cut the slice and don't have it and have more space. I don't know why I have to pay with that and not satisfy the law that you've got in the city.
Ms. Haley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I feel like I need to give a little bit more context because we have two new committee members sitting around the table, being our mayor and Councillor Bougie, who wasn't here for the previous or the original application. When this garage was applied for and the building permit was issued in 2015, we pulled the permit to review how this happened, to see, how was the error made. When individuals apply for a building permit, they must show a site plan demonstrating that they can meet the required 1.2 meter interior side yard setback for accessory structures. The building permit application demonstrated that they could meet it. There was no reason for staff at that time to be concerned based on the information provided to us. We do not require a survey for every building permit application. If we did, you would have a lot of complaints or people not constructing because of the cost, especially in larger lots like this. It's always the applicant's responsibility to ensure that they are constructing, meeting the requirements of the permit. At that time, our building official must have been satisfied that they believed they met at least the 1.2 meter setback. I understand there was some sort of issue that arose that resulted in the need of the survey. The Ontario Planning Act is written for situations like this. So what happens is when we find buildings that have been constructed that don't meet the setback, and the intent is probably not done on purpose. They probably intend to meet it, just like the one we heard earlier this evening. It was, you know, a very, very minor variance. Sometimes these things happen. The public has the right to come back and apply and ask the township to consider it, approve it, or refuse it. And this is where we're at today. So the neighbors, or excuse me, the property owners have followed the process. When people come into our office, I have to offer this process, whether I support the application or not. It's part of the Ontario Planning Act. So I understand your frustration. I completely understand it. I don't believe this was done intentionally in 2015. They now are able to apply, and they've applied. So again, going back to, you know, we got to think of time here. We've gone on quite long on this application. We have 3 options before us this evening. The committee can approve it, the committee can defer it and ask for additional information if you want clarification or satisfaction from the engineers that maybe perhaps it can be done within six inches, or the committee can refuse it. And I'll be happy to take your decision and move on accordingly. And regardless what your decision is, I'll explain what the next steps are.
I'll go Councillor McDonnell and then Councillor Bougie.
So through you, Mr. Chair. Joanne, I guess, can you give us some options then? If, obviously, if this is approved, the work begins, the building permit's applied for within 6 months, and we would anticipate that the work be done, and, you know, whether it's surveys done after to be sure that they're on their side of the line. I'm sure they aren't gonna intentionally screw that up, that's for sure. They're gonna be maybe a little more attention to detail on that part of it this time. If we were to say no to this application this evening and refuse it, repercussions from there, what would we be looking at? Obviously, if we defer, we're just gonna be back here with this, probably a very similar issue unless we're asking for more, but my bigger question is, what if we say no?
So through you, Mr. Chair, if the answer is no this evening, we prepare a decision that says no. We issue that decision. The applicant has the right to appeal the decision, and that decision can be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal, which is essentially a court that's held outside of the municipality and heard by an independent tribunal. If they choose not to appeal, then we are now aware of this retaining wall going onto the neighboring property owners. Therefore, our building department will be addressing it. And we have various forms of how we can address it, and typically it would be done in order to comply. Would it come back as an additional minor variance request? I don't know, because then they're gonna be back to the drawing board with a design. I think you're better off deferring it and getting maybe advice from the engineer that all options have been pursued. This might be the only option. I mean, this option that was given to us showed that it was going to be constructed within the property line. It showed that it was going to be slightly offset inside the property line visibly. Underneath is below. I felt that this would be an acceptable option, but if not, let's defer it and we'll go back and explore on the options. Or
I just want to, there's just one more point I want to make to that. This could go to the OLT, and we could be told, no, we're wrong, correct?
that is correct. They will make an independent decision.
And the independent decision could come back as what has been presented here tonight is sufficient and,
Possibly.
okay. Just to put everything on the table, I guess. At this point, we can't beat this to death. We either have to make a decision tonight or we have to defer it. So I don't know if is the best option to go back and ask the mayors to speak with their engineer to see if there is an alternative to moving it back 6 inches, or do we just say yes, or do we just say no? I think we've got to make that decision now.
Okay, Councillor Bougie also had a question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just looking at this and reviewing it, I think if it's not satisfactory to this committee in regards to the amount of space from the property line, I think we need to go back to the engineer and see how much more we can go and then bring it back, and then if we're satisfied at that point. But I don't think it hurts in investigating that, and that way maybe the neighbors here and the property owner will both be happy in the end.
Okay, I see. Is there a comment from the crowd? Or sorry, I see, from the applicant, sorry, Ms. Mayor, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. As we said earlier tonight, when we spoke with the engineer, we said if there was a way that it did not have to go right to the line, that would be great. My understanding from him at that time when we met with him is that's something that is only going to be known when the retaining wall, that tiny section of corner of retaining wall that is over the line, once that is disassembled and once they dig down and see what needs to be done for that frost insulation and for that berm to be structurally sound for the garage, that's when they will know, can they move it back by 1 or 2 inches or can they not? That's something, that was my understanding and my husband's too.
Okay, thank you for that bit of information. Did you?
Do you want it in writing?
Oh, go ahead.
I'm going to make a motion to defer. We're 25 after 7. And nothing, no construction is going to take place until likely after the half loads anyway. So see if, have them go back to the engineer and find out for sure whether it can come back another few inches. I think we have no choice. I'm not ready to say no, but I'm not ready to say yes here. So.
I have a seconder on deferring.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll second that as well. And is it possible for the committee to just request that Mr. and Mrs. May get something in writing from the engineer? If what they're stating this evening, and they've said it twice now, that this is their understanding from the engineer, if they can get the committee something in writing from the engineer saying that our goal is to bring it back 2, 3, 6, whatever they can, but it's only going to be determined at that point, then if they don't mind getting that in writing, or are we allowed to ask for that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have to ask for that. I have no choice because if not, I'd be presenting something verbally to the committee and I'm not a professional engineer. So we absolutely would have a report back and before you for you to be able to properly review, consider in a timely fashion.
Okay, so with that, I had moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor MacDonald, that we defer this matter until we get further information. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. All right, the next meeting will be March 6th, 2023.
Excuse me, I had my hand up.
Oh, I thought that was a lingering hand from.
No,
Didn't
no.
Yeah, the item is presently voted on, but you can call Ms. Haley tomorrow. I'm sorry, I really thought I saw the hand stay up. I didn't see it come down and come back up. I apologize for that, but the motion has been called. So I'm sure you have Ms. Haley's contact information? Okay, perfect. So then I do procedurally have to go by the agenda, which is next meeting is March 6th, 2023. And then can I have a mover and a seconder for adjournment? Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that we close the committee, the call of the chair at 7:25 p.m. Thank you.